I'm Carlo Rogers, co-director of Evolve Communities, and today I'll be interviewing my co-director, Munya Andrews. Welcome, Munya.
Hello, Carla.
And so this year we're exploring Naidoc Week and the theme of Naidoc Week, which is, yes, because of her, we can. So before we get into what Naidoc Week means and the theme, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, Munya?
I'm a Bardi woman from the Kimberley region of Western Australia, just north of Broome there. So I'm a saltwater person, grew up in the Kimberley and have lived in other places around Australia.
And do you know, so every year during the second week of July we celebrate Naidoc. Does Naidoc have a specific meaning?
Well, yes, it does. Naidoc stands for National Aboriginal and Islander Day Observance Committee. Interesting that it didn't have Torres Strait Islander as such, National Aboriginal and Islander Observance Day Committee. And it sort of began as, first of all, as in the early days as a form of protest, really just trying to raise awareness of the way that Aboriginal people were treated in Australian society, the prejudice and the discrimination that they faced. That's how it started originally as a form of protest, and in the 1920s, and it was actually called a day of mourning.
Right, and so that's a day of mourning. What's that about, and is it still the case?
No, it's not at all. But back then it was all about, that sorry business stuff about feeling sorry and mourning what had happened to Aboriginal people from the early days of colonisation. So remembering all the massacres and as I say, the really ill treatment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So in mourning in that sense. And so once that was achieved, it started to evolve from there. So we see in I think it was 1945 to the 50s that the shift changed a bit, and people were saying, well, we don't no longer need to talk about or reminding people about all the bad events that have happened. How about celebrating some of the good things, all of the things that we love about our people and our history and our culture? So it was from then that it started as a national day of celebration, really, of Indigenous peoples and their culture. So the shift changed from there. And so in 1974, the first Naidoc committee was established, and they said, look, why, instead of just having one day to celebrate Indigenous people, why not have an entire week? And so they decided upon having an entire week to the Naidoc that we have today, but of course kept the name of the committee, which is Naidoc.
And each year there's a different theme for Naidoc, and last year you did a terrific talk on the theme, which was Why Languages Matter. Mm-hmm. So this year's theme, Because of Her We Can, celebrates the achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women all over. You've taken, as is your style, Munya, you've taken a different approach. Tell us about that.
Well, while I think it's important to celebrate the achievements of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander women everywhere, because they were at the forefront of change and whatnot, it struck me, I wanted to take a really sort of broader approach, and one is to not forget the ultimate mother, of course, which is the land, our mother. And so I started writing an article, and I took that approach about not forgetting the land, our mother, and then of course all the other Aboriginal women goddesses from around the country, as a way of celebrating women in spirit world, if you like, and all their achievements, because they make us strong, and that's where we get our culture from.
And so I love, we often talk about the importance of land and country to identity. So tell us more about why is it important to celebrate and acknowledge the land?
Well, first of all, because of her we can eat, we can dance, we can have ceremonies, we can heal ourselves and others, but also for Aboriginal people, it's the land that gives us our sense of identity. So for instance, you'll get a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people referring to themselves by making reference to the environment of the land of where they're from. So, for instance, coming from where I do, we're a coastal people, so I identify as a saltwater person. Indigenous people that live by the waterways, by the lakes and rivers, and that will call themselves freshwater peoples or riverside tribes. And of course, people in the desert will call themselves desert peoples. Even the homeless people in Darwin refer to themselves as the tall grass people because they sleep in the tall spear grass that grows well over 6 foot high in that area. So all the time our mob are looking towards the land to identify who we are as a people. So it's very significant because first of all it tells us who we are and where we're from. So very, very important to not forget the land, our mother.
And we're looking, so it's all Australians celebrating Naidoc Week, and I'm not Aboriginal, but I do very much identify as a saltwater person and have a love of that coast. Can people also celebrate the land? I understand that you teach dreaming to people.
Well, everyone should celebrate the land, of course, because she sustains and nourishes all of us, and also it's a way for non-Indigenous people to feel that they belong in this country. I think then, I'm all about us sharing our being and our experiences and whatnot. So it's really important that non-Indigenous people celebrate Naidoc as well, because it's a celebration of your First Nations people. So that's something to be proud of and to celebrate.
Yeah, fantastic. And besides the land, is there anyone else or anything else that we should be celebrating with this theme? Because of her, we can.
Well, again, I go to the Aboriginal women in spirit, the goddesses. It's really important to not forget them. One of the most important of all the deities, of course, is the rainbow snake, our mother. And again, because of her, we have our culture, we have our ceremonies, our special sacred laws, and also our healing, because it's the mother, the snake, that gives us those healing powers. So it's very important to celebrate her, as well as all of the Aboriginal women goddesses right across the country, from the Mimi spirits in Northern Territory to Jillinya in the Kimberley, the big boss woman.
So you do have a chapter in a book, Goddesses in World Culture, and it is about Jillinya.
Yeah.
So can you tell us more about Jillinya?
Yeah, well, Jillinya is the big mother referred to up there, and it was she that created the first peoples, the Gwianguan people. And so she's very significant, again, because of what she, the laws that she brought. She brought the sacred woman law, the sharing law, and the law that determines the skin system, the marriage laws, and so forth. So she played a very huge role in creating all of that, and she's painted on the walls, the rock walls and caves there, were her images. And as well as being a woman, the body of a woman, her symbol, her sacred symbol is that of the praying mantis. So she's represented by that. So when I was a little kid growing up in the Kimberley, we were told never to hurt the praying mantis, and because if we did, we would be punished, and she would send the big storms, the big cyclones, and that could wipe people out. So we're taught to treat her very carefully and with respect. And it wasn't until I grew older that I learned why that was, and it's because she is the embodiment of Jillinya, the sacred mother.
Wow.
So we don't harm our mother, the land, or we don't harm our mother, the rainbow snake, or we don't harm our mother, the praying mantis. So that's why. So she's the big top boss woman.
Top boss woman. And is that the case? Is that just up in Kimberley, where you're from? Or?
Yeah, pretty much Jillinya as herself, but there's lots of other boss women around the country, and Indigenous people that are watching would be well aware of their own boss women in their areas.
Wow,
well.
and it sounds from what you just told, and I imagine there's much more to it, but those boss women had important stories and lessons for you to learn.
Absolutely. Lessons to learn, messages to impart, teaching us how to be better human beings. One of the most common ones that's common throughout the country is the Seven Sisters dreaming, which is a very big dreaming. In fact, it was the dreaming that opened the Olympics of 2000. People will remember the Indigenous women there dancing to the Seven Sisters. So that one is a common one. So although the stories will differ depending which country you're in, and the names will change as the languages do. But that one's shared right across the country, the 7 women from the stars that came down and taught human beings all sorts of things.
And you have your wonderful book about the 7 sisters of the Pleiades, which we'll be talking about in another podcast. Before we finish off, Munya, I'd love for you to share with our listeners and with me how we can celebrate Naidoc Week.
Well, you can celebrate Naidoc by taking part in all of the Naidoc activities, attending the events, talking, laughing, sharing stories with Indigenous people, but also perhaps take it upon yourself to talk to one Aboriginal woman to find out about her life. It could be a colleague, might be a boss or whatever, and just sit down and find out, take the time to find out more about her life and what it's like for her as an Indigenous woman living in this country in Australia today. And if not a real person, then go back to history and look at, choose a significant Indigenous woman from a historical period, I would say. So that's the way to go about doing it, is just get out there, meet with Indigenous people and share the stories and celebrate everybody, celebrate Naidoc. We have a wonderful Indigenous culture here for everyone to share in.
Thank you, Munya. Thank you, everyone from around Australia. Happy Naidoc Week and Nangamanladi.
Nangamanladi.